Hi, welcome to Talking Books and Stuff, the program that talks all about books and writing and stuff. Here's your host, Dennis Rimmer.
And welcome back to yet another episode of Talking Books and Writing and Books and Movies and Songs and Stuff. And today we're going to talk all about that and even more, I'm sure. From Hollywood, California, we have the author of Icons, Idols, and Idiots. It is Bruce Belland from the Four Preps, talking about his adventures in America's first boy band. So, hello, Bruce. Keep on rocking.
Hi, Dennis. It's good talking to you, my friend. How are things up north?
Up north, they're pretty good. It's getting to be winter here. We're in the low 20s Fahrenheit. Not cold enough yet for the ice to form at the rink across the street, because we have natural ice here for the hockey team, so they have about a 4-month season. So, yeah, it's getting to be winter, which is fine. You know, we got our snow tires and our block heaters.
And your long johns, I know. We went, in the middle of winter, we were in Edmonton, I think it was, and I had just bought a new 8mm movie camera. This is years ago when that was the new rage. And I went outside to take some pictures and send my wife in L.A. about the snow, and the camera froze.
Yeah.
I couldn't get it to operate.
Oh, no. So, Bruce Belland is here. As you can tell, he's a chatty guy. And we're talking about the Four Preps and his life as a musician, a singer, a comedian, because you were the funny guy of the group, were you?
Well, I can't help myself. I'm short and funny looking, so I just went with it, you know.
You got to go with what you got, right?
That's right. Play the deck you were handled.
Okay.
You were handed. That's right.
So you started out in Chicago, and then at a young age, the family moved to Hollywood. And for a guy like you who hung on the radio shows of the day and newspaper stories, that must have been a dream come true.
It really was, Dennis. I remember the night that my brother walked into our little bedroom in Chicago, and said, "We're moving." And my brother always had all the big announcements. Very, very important man. He said, "Well, moving what?" He said, "Yeah, we're moving to some place called West Hollywood." Well, by then I had devoured every movie magazine that my mom read, and knew that Hollywood was where everybody lived that I loved and adored, from Mickey Rooney to Lana Turner. So when he told me that night we were heading to Hollywood, I fell asleep with all kinds of dreams and aspirations and fantasies, and some of them even came true. But we got in the old 36 Ford and headed across Route 66 for Hollywood, and my dream came just a little bit closer.
And your parents are two different types, obviously a male and a female, but your father...
Very good, then. It's highly perceptive.
Your father was more of a strict guy, and your mother kind of gave everything a little wink and a nod and let you do what you wanted to, more or less. Is that how it went?
Yeah, my father was a fundamentalist minister and had his own set of rules and lifestyle, and he was a very charismatic, fun guy, but he had his strict rules and guidelines, and some things he took pretty seriously in terms of church attendance and your personal conduct. My mom, however, was a former radio gospel singer with just more high spirit and fun-loving and joie de vivre. I mean, she just was full of life and energy and humor. And so between the two of them, my father taught me discipline. He taught me to be responsible and take responsibility for what I was doing or didn't do. And my mom said, "Music is what you were born to do. Let's sit down next to me on the piano bench and let's make a singer out of you." So between the two of them, I think I had some pretty good DNA at the time.
And it worked out because you started at a young age singing in front of audiences and not doing too badly.
Well, yeah, Yeah, I sang my first solo at age 4. My dad told me he'd give me my very own stick of chewing gum if I could sing in the morning worship service next Sunday. If I could sing "God Bless America" straight through without one mistake in the lyrics, he'd give me my own stick of chewing gum. I had an older brother. My mom used to tear a stick in half and give us each a half because preachers don't make a lot of money, so a full stick of chewing gum was too exorbitant. But anyway, I sang the solo at age 4. The congregation erupted in shouts of amen, and afterwards praised me and hugged me and patted me on the head and told me how wonderful I was, and so did my mom and my dad. I said, well, that's it. At age 4, I know what I want to be. I want to be a singer, and I never really changed my aspirations from then on.
That's great, and we're talking, like I said, with Bruce Belland, Icons, Idols, and Idiots of Hollywood, My Adventures in America's First Boy Band. So why did you want to write this book, and why now?
Well, originally my intent in writing it, being the ham that I am, and having performed in front of an audience all my life, I envisioned going out and doing a one-man show, just simply telling my story and singing the appropriate songs during the show, and fielding questions from the audience and so forth. So when I began to write it 8 years ago, that was really what I had in mind. And of course, COVID has changed everything in everybody's life. Whether or not I'll tour with this or not, I don't know. But once I began to write it, and I went through all my steamer trunks full of memorabilia, I realized that there was a story here about a little kid at 4 who wants to be a singer and has it happen in his teen years. So a number of reasons. I also had several people who were Preps fans over the years say, when are you going to tell your story? It's not a run-of-the-mill story the way it happened to us at Hollywood High. So it all kind of came together, and suddenly COVID got me off the road, so I wasn't in airplanes and hotels every day, and I could sit at home in my study and start the book and finish it. So it's hard to imagine anything good came out of COVID, but at least it got me to put my fanny on the chair and get the book finished.
Right. So, and that gets us to the book. And now this is going to be, I'm just going to probably jump all over the place here because there's so much, and I made a bunch of notes, and there's probably too much to talk about, or not enough. So I'm just going to rattle off a bunch of names, but you went to Hollywood High. Is that true? The actual real-life Hollywood High?
Dennis, when I used to travel, if I was in Japan, for example, and told some Japanese person that I went to Hollywood High, they simply did not believe it. They knew Hollywood, of course, and they were enchanted by the whole idea of Hollywood, but they actually had a high school called Hollywood High. In fact, I went to a reunion last Friday at the school. About 400 people turned out, and we talked about the book, and I visited the campus again. They have a little museum about celebrities who attended school there, and there's our gold record and a picture of the prep. So it's a very important part of my backstory of my life and my history, is that wonderful Hollywood High School, where when you went there, everything seemed possible. If you had show business ambitions, you saw kids around you that were already acting in movies and on the radio, and sitting next to me in class with makeup on from having shot a movie that morning at another studio. So it was all around me. I mean, David and Ricky Nelson of Ozzie and Harriet were my classmates. So very much a thriving show business atmosphere. In fact, there were actually families whose daughters they moved into the Hollywood High School district so their daughter, who wanted to be an actress, could attend Hollywood High and get discovered. So, it had a reputation from the days Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland went there that it was kind of a birthplace for a lot of performers. So I got lucky in more ways than one when there I was, a freshman in Hollywood High. And
then you had a leg injury, and some guy, a senior, had to carry you around, apparently. And apparently this guy ended up to be, not so bad, kind of made a name for himself. Who was that?
Oh, you mean good old Bob?
Oh, yeah, Bob.
Yeah, I broke my ankle. In middle school and junior high, and so I was told by the administration that I could pick any classmate I wanted to carry my books to class for me while I was on crutches, and I thought about it, and the heartthrob, the hero, the golden boy on campus was a fellow we all called Bob at the time. He carried my books faithfully for the whole 6 weeks. I was on crutches. He became a pal of mine. He kind of defended me from the bullies because I was a small squirt. Bob later on changed his name to Robert Redford and became, they tell me, quite a movie star.
Yeah.
But at the time I knew him, he was my book bearer.
Your book, having your books carried by Robert Redford as a story. If that was the only story you had, that would be perfect right there. You could dine out on that forever.
Yeah. Because it could only happen in Hollywood. In Des Moines, it probably wouldn't have happened.
That's right. Oh, right. It could only happen in Hollywood. So the 4 preps, you guys met at Hollywood High, is that true?
That's right. I ran on the track team with Glen Larson, and Ed Cobb was on the football team, so we all kind of knew each other from hanging around the locker room and being jocks at high school. And we were all from very low-income families. Of course, preachers don't make much money at all. My father, I think, made $140 a week. Glen Larson, one of our other members of the preps, his mother was a widow. She worked as a waitress up on Sunset at a restaurant on Sunset. Marvin, our high tenor, was an orphan being raised by a disabled grandmother. Ed Cobb, our bass, his parents had 3 jobs between them. So we were from a blue-collar working-class community, and I never thought I would encounter 3 guys who were as driven with as much ambition and dreams as I had. But my God, I found them, and the 3 of them joined me, and suddenly we were 4 guys saying, "Get out of our way, Hollywood! Here we come."
No, there's a AC/DC song that says, "It's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll." And I guess the same thing is true. It was a long way to the top for you guys. It didn't just happen overnight, did it?
Well, no, it didn't, but it really does when you think about the struggle and the number of years some people put in, and maybe it never happens for them. We got fairly lucky. We founded the group for a talent show at Hollywood High in '54. Well, of course, the talent show at that time consisted of a girl accordion player, a ballerina doing a classical dance, and then we came on and sang Shaboom. Well, of course, we stole the show with Shaboom. Nothing else like it on the program. So we began, after that talent show success, we began to do all kinds of jobs around Southern California. We did sock hops, we did beach parties, we did hay rides, we did bar mitzvahs, we did birthday parties. Usually for not much more than gas money. We'd all pile in Glen's old Oldsmobile and load it up with gas and drive to the job and hope they'd pay us something. And for about a year and a half or 2 out of high school, about a year out of high school, we were doing that around town. We worked with the Righteous Brothers, who were also trying to make it, with Richie Valens, who was an aspiring performer, with Jimmy Rogers, and we all were kind of the gang in Southern California hoping to get a record deal. And through sheer coincidence, we came into the attention of a Mel Shower, who was a very prominent personal manager. He managed at the time Les Paul and Mary Ford. So needless to say, he had quite an entree to Capitol Records, they being one of Capitol's biggest selling acts. So when he heard our demo tape of a dance that we performed for at UCLA for a sorority, he was impressed enough with the tape to take it to Capitol. And, of course, he had an entree in managing Les Paul and Mary Ford. And they were looking around for some answer to this new thing called rock and roll and this new thing called Top 40 Radio. And here were 4 teenage kids from Hollywood High, so that maybe they can, sell some records to the teen audience out there, because Nat Cole and Frank Sinatra don't know what to do with those kids. So we got signed to Capitol. We were going to be the answer. I mean, the ironic thing is that we weren't really rock and roll at all. We were kind of middle of the road pop with maybe a little bit of a beat to it. But anyhow, we were young, and that was the first prerequisite that they were looking for. So, just about a year out of Hollywood High, still in our teens, we got signed by Capitol Records, and it made us, in effect, the first boy band in America. We were still in our teens. Some of the guys were still at Hollywood High. I had graduated by then, but we were all still in our teens, and suddenly we're on Capitol Records with the 4 Freshmen and the Kingston Trio and Frank Sinatra, and we were very excited and hopeful and thinking big thoughts about how successful we were going to be and how we were going to spend the money.
And how did the name come about, the Four Preps? Because there was a lot of four guys at the time, right?
The four lads, the four coins, four lads from Toronto. Thank you. The Diamonds were from Toronto too, of course. The four lads, the four aces, the four coins. So we wanted to make it a foursome. And in the talent show, we did two numbers 20 minutes apart. We went out. We were about to go on for our first number, and the MC, our student body president, shot me a look and said, "What do I call you guys?" And I just gave him a dumb stare. We didn't have a name, so he went out and said, "And now here's the Bruce Belland Quartet." Well, Glen Larson, my partner, shot me a look like, "Oh, really, Bruce Belland Quartet? I don't think so." So we killed him with the first number. We came off. We now had 20 minutes before our second number. As soon as we got off stage, we're higher than a kite because the kids are screaming and yelling and going crazy. Well, we enjoyed it for a fast 30 seconds when I said, "Okay, that's enough of that. We got a name. We got 20 minutes to pick out a name." Well, we thought, since we're in school, four classmates, four grads, four scholars, and during the evening each night at the auditorium there at Hollywood High, they were producing a play, and in that play was a prop newspaper. It was sitting on a table nearby. It was a prop for the play at night, and it was open to the sports section, and the headline said, "Preps Sports Results," meaning the high school scores, of course.
Right.
So we saw preps and four preps, and 20 minutes later we had a name.
There you go. And just as a quick aside, I worked a few years back with a girl in Vancouver, BC, whose father was in the Four Lads. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So,
tell me her last name. Do you know it?
Well, she had a number of different names, but her name was Perry Jones, but I can't remember.
Oh. Well, the four lads were Jimmy Arnold, Bernie Tourish, Frank Busseri, and Connie Contarini. So she must have been one of those four.
One of those four. No, I didn't know her unmarried name, as they used to call it. So you guys are rocking and rolling. You have a record. It comes out. It's, what is it called? It was...
Very first one was Dreamy Eyes.
Dreamy Eyes, which you said was on the charts for about a week and then dropped off?
Yeah, the craziest thing how that happened. Of course, the first week, not only did it enter the top 100, but it entered it at 56, which is halfway up the ladder already. I mean, it's unheard of. With a bullet, which meant it's a red-hot release, we thought, oh, my goodness, I'm trying to figure out what kind of Corvette I'm going to buy. With all the money, and our manager, bless his heart, was a seasoned old pro and had been around for years. He said, "Fellas, it's a wacko business. 1 week there's not a hit make. Just relax, think the good thoughts, keep your fingers crossed, and let's see what happens next week." Well, the second week of its release, it was gone. It disappeared. It's like the record never existed. To this day, I can't figure out how that works or how that happened, but it was gone. And so now, suddenly, having thought we were going to get a hit right out of the chute, we're searching like crazy for a hit, scrambling around, recording every kind of style we could figure out: Latin, calypso,
right,
doo-wop, hard rock, country. We released 5 or 6 records. We did not get a hit. Our year option was about up, and whether or not they picked up the second year option depended on whether we got a hit. So I had been begging our A&R man, a producer at Capitol, Will Gilmore, who produced people like Frank Sinatra, Judy Garland, Louis Prima, and Keely Smith, the Kingston Trio. Like I said, we've written this little song about Catalina. Would you listen to it? To which he very patiently answered, "Now look let me explain something to you young fellas. You're singers, not songwriters. Singers don't write songs. Perry Como, Eddie Fisher, Patti Page, they don't write songs.
Oh, yeah?
We'll find a hit for you. Just relax." So one night I was dating a girl in Nancy Sinatra's social club at University High, and we went over after the club meeting with our guitars to serenade the girls and flirt. And during the evening, we sang 26 Miles for her and her classmates in the club. About 2 weeks later, I ran into Nancy, and she said, "When are you going to record that great song?" I said, "What song?" She said, "The one you sang for us." And she sang a little of it. She's 26 miles across the sea. So now I went to Capitol, and to our A&R man, who of course was Sinatra's A&R man as well, and I pounded on the desk and said, "Nancy Sinatra and her whole girls club loved this song. They would buy the record. Please, can we put it out?"
Right.
So they finally consented to make it the very obscure hidden B side of the A side, which was a song from a Broadway musical. So it finally came out on the market, and we kept our fingers crossed.
So who flipped it over to make it the hit?
I got to tell you, Dennis, my second book talks about fabulous unknowns in my life who affected my career and my life and changed it. And one of the fabulous unknowns that I write about, I wish I knew who it was. It was a disc jockey, late-night disc jockey in Hartford, Connecticut.
Really?
Now, Capitol released the record about a tropical island in December.
Yeah.
So in Hartford, Connecticut, the snowdrifts are piling up outside.
Yep. He
plays the A side. It was a really innocuous song from the Music Man, a song called "It's You," which was the A side. So he played it as Capitol told him to, and he had to go to the men's room. So he flipped it over and put it on 26 Mile. Went up to the hall of the men's room, and when he came back and the song was finishing, the switchboard was lighting up like a Christmas tree. What's that song you play? Who are those guys? Where do we get that record? Bless his heart.
Yeah.
Bless his heart. He picked the phone up the next morning, Dennis. He picked the phone up and actually called the Capitol Tower and said, "You don't know me. I'm Joe Schmo from Hartford, Connecticut, but I got news. You guys are on the wrong side of the record. I played it. The switchboard lit up. It's 26 Miles, guys." Thank God, at that point, they were not one of the idiots of Hollywood.
Yeah.
They listened. Yeah, really, minor victory. They listened and turned the record over, and the rocket was launched.
Well, let me tell you, having been in radio, many a historic moment has occurred because of taking a break to the men's room. So there you go.
Yeah, and I can't tell you how many artists I've talked to and the interviews I've been doing lately that have their own story about the B-side. It was the B-side. Somebody turned it over.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, you got a #1 record. It's a crazy business.
It's crazy. So there's just a number of names here. I just have to talk about these names. Let's start with Ozzie and Harriet, Rick Nelson, David Nelson, Ozzie. And Ozzie was strong-willed and knew everything. And Harriet had a kind of a backstory where she's kind of a hotsy-totsy. Is that right?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I hadn't realized it until I began the research for the book as well as I knew Ozzie and Harriet and the family. I mean, I used to hang out at their house sometimes, so I was more than just a cast member. I became a family friend. But I didn't know anything about Harriet, and then I began to do research. And before she met Ozzie, she was a dancer at the Cotton Club, which, of course, the hot, steamy, sexy club in New York.
Right.
And in fact, one of the New York columnists wrote about her in his gossip column and said, Harriet, her name at the time was, I think, I can't remember her last name now, but she got called the Cotton Club Bombshell. So she was a Cotton Club dancer, a hot number, and had been married and divorced. So she was a divorcee at the Cotton Club when she met milk-drinking, clean-cut college graduate Ozzie Nelson. And she exuded such confidence in herself, even at a very young age. She became a performer when she was 3 or 4 with her parents' vaudeville act. At 13, she started to be a chain smoker, which she was all her life. And by the time she was 19, her parents had divorced, and she moved with her mother to New York and became a Cotton Club bombshell. Then met Ozzie with his very, very famous band. And then he needed a girl singer,
Yep.
So he hired her. She changed her name to Harriet Hilliard. They went off on a bus tour with the band all over the East Coast, and while they were on tour on the bus, they fell in love.
Oh, boy. And the rest is history. And Rick Nelson's middle name is Hilliard, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes.
Yep. So you're on the show, but there's so much more to talk about. So I'm just going to rattle off some names that happened when you're on the Ozzie and Harriet show, which was on for 14 years, something like that, and was just
14 years. Isn't that something? 14 years.
Well, I'm growing up. I'm I'm 74 now, so late 50s. I'm watching the show, and Rick Nelson comes on and sings a song at the end of every show. So.
I know. Never made any sense. It was a total non sequitur, but there it was.
So you've got you ran into Mamie Van Doren apparently on that show.
Boy, you really done your homework. Good, thank you. Yeah, that was. I mean, obviously, every now and then, in the book, I state, maybe I overstate, but I don't think I can overexpress how much I owe Ozzie Nelson. Watching him over the years, watching him innovate, watching him explore, watching him take chances, watching him control situations where someone could have exploded in a temper tantrum and he calmed it all down. He was an extraordinary man. His people skills were quite extraordinary. And now and then he pulled a surprise out of the hat. So he came up with an episode entitled The Exotic House Mother, in which Kappa Sigma, Dave's fraternity, decides as a publicity stunt to elect a stripper. Well, they didn't call her a stripper on the show. They didn't dare. They called her an exotic dancer.
Oh, yes.
And her name was Bubbles Batassel. I swear it was Bubbles Batassel.
Right.
And when they sent me the script ahead of time, I said, what is it? Whoa, go ahead, Audie. So here she comes to visit the fraternity house, all dressed in a short, tight skirt and high heels, and all bosomy and perfumed. And, of course, all the guys are drooling and falling all over themselves to try and impress her. And at one point, they're doing a bunch of publicity shots where she's doing various chores as the, quote, house mother, unquote, baking a cake in the kitchen, fixing a student's necktie for his date, and sewing a button on someone's jacket, and all the nice motherly things. And then she goes into a room in the fraternity house to nurse a sick boy in bed who's got a thermometer in his mouth and is looking pretty miserable and ill, which of course he isn't. He's faking it to get her attention. And she goes over and takes the thermometer out and pats him on the cheek and gives him a little kiss and gives him a hug. And so there I am. That was me in the bed. I was the student, and now I'm doing a bedroom scene with Mamie Van Doren on the Ozzie and Harriet show. I'm not sure it gets more contradictory than that.
And apparently she's still alive, right?
She is, yeah. Somebody told me that ran into her recently, and she was in pretty good shape. Good for her.
Get her phone number for me.
Yeah, there's this guy in Canada who'd like to meet you. Yeah. Okay, I'll see what I can do, Dennis.
How about Bing Crosby, another big name that played an important part in your career for you guys?
Who?
Bing Crosby.
Oh, boy. Well, of course, growing up before we moved to Hollywood, all ages, up until 10 years of age, I listened to the radio endlessly and sang along with it. And one of the guys I sang along with the most was Bing Crosby. I just idolized them. I still, to this day, I love Frank Sinatra, but nobody to me tops Bing Crosby and his effortless ease, his wonderful rhythmical personality and singing style. So before we had a hit record, we had two hotshot young agents who signed us at MCA, and even though we hadn't had a hit, our act was very powerful and in many ways very different, very unique. We did as much comedy and slapstick, funny, fearless Jerry Lewis comedy along with great singing. So we got a lot of work before we had a hit record off the fact that our act was pretty polished and powerful. So up came this new car for the Ford Motor Company called the Edsel. I will wait for the laugh here. Edsel, yes.
Yep.
And they wanted to make a television special to top all television specials, so they said to the talent agency, get us the biggest names you can get. We want to introduce this car with an all-star lineup. So along came the Edsel television special with Bing Crosby, Frank Sinatra, Louis Armstrong, Rosemary Clooney, and a surprise drop-in guest, Bob Hope, and four kids called the Four Preps. Who? The Four Preps. Excuse me, Bing Sinatra, Frank Sinatra, and who? The Four Preps. So we actually got equal billing at the front of the show where the credits roll. There we were in the same size print on the screen right next to Bing Crosby and Frank Sinatra. I still don't know how they ever pulled it off, our agents, but they did. So I started a week of pure fantasy fulfillment. To be standing 10 feet from Bing Crosby and backing him on the Whiff and Poof song. I mean, to this day, I still can't believe it. As I say in the book, I kept waiting for my alarm clock to ring and wake me up from this dream I'm having. It was wonderful watching Sinatra, watching Rosemary Clooney, and Louis Armstrong. There's nobody like Louis. He just lit up the room when he walked in. It was just a fabulous experience. And all the things I had thought and imagined about Bing Crosby were true. His effortless ease, his kindness. I mean, the minute we first walked in the room for the first time, obviously totally intimidated by people in the room like Sinatra, Crosby made a little joke about us and welcomed us, and we felt like part of the family right away. He was an extraordinary man who, to this day, I hold in extremely high regard.
Is there something that those, I'll say the old-time guys had, or entertainers, male, female groups, is there something they had that maybe today's entertainers lack or don't have?
Well, I've often said, in recent years in particular, in order to become a success in show business in television, you got to show up on time. You got to learn the scripts. You got to remember your lines. You can't get drunk. You can't be late. You got to mind your P's and Q's. If you want to be a movie star, you got to get to the set. You got to know your lines. You got to look good. You want to be a hit on Broadway, you got to learn the lines. You got to show up 8 times a week and do your show. You want to make a hit record, you can go to the garage with 3 pals from high school and knock out a hit.
Right.
No discipline. No regimen of any kind. Just, hey man, let's just make some noise and see what happens. So it's a different aspect of the business than anything else. And we worked terribly hard. As I say in the book, we had day jobs, so we would get together and rehearse in my dad's church in the social hall from midnight to 2 or 3 in the morning. We wanted it very badly, but we weren't going to go into a garage and turn out some piece of junk and hope it made a hit. We wanted to really be polished and do a nightclub act as well. So we put a lot of hours in to becoming more than just a garage band that got lucky with 1 hit.
That's right. And you got lucky, more than lucky, because you worked at it. Tell us about the on-campus tour where you guys made, I'm not exaggerating, about 900 shows in 3 days, something like that?
That's a slight exaggeration. Oh, you Canadians, you're always so over the top, No, that was the tour, as I say, I cover it in the book, in detail, but yeah, we started out at the University of British Columbia and drove east through the entire Dominion and ended up about as far east as you can go and still be in Canada, which was St. John's, Newfoundland, which is our final concert. But going through every province and doing the university in each of those provinces and meeting the people in the different sections of the country and sort of studying their lifestyle and their reactions to the show, which is fascinating. I developed an affection and an affinity for all things Canadian that I have to this day. I mean, one of the most fun experiences I ever had was in Windsor, Ontario. So many fun things happened to me in Canada that it has a warm spot in my heart. One of the few warm things about Canada this time of year, but there it is.
Well, that's great. And a couple more questions. This is just going on forever. I wish we had an hour-long open-ended special, but I've got to ask you about the other guys in the band because we're talking with Bruce Belland here about the 4 Preps, but Ed Cobb became a big music guy in his own right.
He sure did. He was a natural genius. He never learned to read music. I offered to teach him how to read one time. He said, no, I don't want to do that. It'll mess me up. So he was strictly an organic performer, a musical genius, and when we were growing up together as teenagers, Ed Cobb lived across the street from me. On Sunday evenings after our church service, we all pile in the Sunday school bus and head down the Watts, the South Central L.A., and go to the Black Baptist Church there, where they had a wonderful choir, and they were on the air from 10:30 to 11:30 on Sunday nights on the top rock station in L.A., because their music was so infectious and so joyful that the rock station carried them on Sunday nights. We would go down there and sit in the audience and listen to that black gospel choir, and Ed picked up so many of the nuances of black styles and black music that later that really became his forte as a producer. He produced Kenny Lester and so many acts, the Standells, wrote a song called Tainted Love. But he had that natural genius from the start, and absorbing as he did the black gospel style as a teenager, and then tying in with some great musicians in the industry in later years, he made his mark. He's featured twice in the Guinness Book of World Records for his accomplishments of his. So yeah, he was a rare individual, 6'4", gentle giant.
You were the little guy and he was the big guy. Is that how it worked?
Yeah, I'm 5'6" and he's 6'5", so on stage you got comedy right away, you know.
Right. And if it wasn't for Glen A. Larson, we wouldn't have the $6 Million Man, the $6 Million Woman, Knight Rider, stuff like that. Is that right?
Yep, he wanted to be a producer from the time I met him in grammar school. In fact, he used to describe his 13 years in the four preps as a little detour he took before he became a producer. But yeah, from the very start in grammar school when I knew Glenn, he would go down to the studios of NBC at Sunset and Vine and go to the trash bin behind the studio where they had thrown away all the discarded scripts after they shot them. And he'd collect all those scripts, put them in his wagon, walk them home to West Hollywood, and reenact them all in the garage of his house with all the little playmates from the neighborhood. So he was producing shows when he was 12 and 13, and then he made it official when he left the preps. And yeah, he was my partner and dear friend for a long, long time. We went from grammar school right up through the preps until we lost him a few years ago. He was quite a special guy.
And we're just talking about the original four preps here. So Marv Ingram, what did he end up doing?
He was always the out man. He was always the oddball. You know, we'd go out and party after a show. He'd go up to his room and read the New York Times. So he was very much an intellectual, a bookworm, kind of a soft-spoken guy. Wonderful, one of the best singers I've ever in my life sung with. But he was very much into the stock market, and when the preps disbanded, he became a stockbroker for Shearson Hamel, and would sell shiploads of grain to China and so forth. So he had a very successful career after the preps disbanded as well. But so yeah, we were all ambitious above and beyond the preps, and I'm happy to say we didn't end up shining shoes at the airport. We all went on to successful other careers.
Couple more quick questions here, Bruce Belland, before we wrap it up. First of all, talking about playing at UBC in Vancouver, BC. Did you ever run into that famous disc jockey, Red Robinson, there?
No, I didn't.
Oh.
I missed the thrill.
Well, yeah, he interviewed everybody. He introduced Elvis on stage in Vancouver, introduced the Beatles on stage in Vancouver.
Wow.
In fact, he was a living legend. He just passed away a couple of years ago, and so...
Tell me his name. Tell me his name again.
Red Robinson.
No. I remember a disc jockey in Windsor named Bud Davies. I don't know why I remember that name, but no, I don't know that name.
Okay. Well, that's too bad, because I figured he would be all over a group such as yours, because he just started sort of the teen music thing in Vancouver back in the mid to late 50s. So, yeah. So one more question. You're in Detroit. You got a royalty check. You want to buy a car. Tell us about that one.
Well, you know, I was in my hotel room one morning, and the phone rang, and it was the concierge saying, "We got a special delivery letter for you. Should I bring it up to the room?" I said, "Absolutely." He brought it up. He gave it to me. I went over and sat down in bed and opened it up, and it was for $4,011.23, the most money I had ever been in the same room with in my life. I couldn't believe it. I mean, my head was swimming. I thought, oh my, I never had that kind of money, ever. So that afternoon I went jogging, as I used to do before every show, and I ran by a Chevy agency not far from the hotel where we were staying, and there was in the showroom was a gleaming little jewel, a 1959 Corvette with the dual headlights, the fiberglass body, it had orange-colored leather. It was charcoal gray with a silver inset. So I walked in, and the salesman came over. Now I'm in my jogging clothes, so I'm in a tank top and shorts and sneakers. Plus, no matter how I was dressed, I always looked about 15. So now I'm standing here asking me if I can buy the Corvette, and when I look at the price tag, it was $3,440.11. Well, since my royalty check had an 11 and $4,011, and this was $364.11, I thought, well, that's an omen. I'm supposed to have this car.
Exactly.
So I asked the salesman, "Can you wait here? Don't go anywhere. Don't sell this car to anybody else. I'll be right back." I tore home back to the hotel, got the check, came back, said, "Okay, here's my check. I want to buy the car." Well, of course, looking the way I did, being a stranger with an out-of-town check, drew suspicion right away. Next thing I know, I'm in the sales manager's office, and he's on the phone calling the Capitol Tower to see if this oddball kid that came in with this big royalty check is really legitimate or this is all a scam. Yeah. He was convinced he just caught a con man,
Right.
Well, he talked to the tower, and of course, as corporate world will do, it put him from one call to another, to the royalty department, to the payment department, to the payroll department. Finally got somebody, the vice president of business affairs at Capitol, who happened to be a friend and a big Four Preps fan. He said, "Oh my goodness, yes, that check is a good check, absolutely. That's Mr. Belland of the Four Preps. They're a valuable asset to Capitol Records. That check is just absolutely legitimate." He said, "As a matter of fact, let me call the bank next door to you and tell them who I am and what's going on. They'll be happy to honor the check," which they did. I went next door with the Chevy salesman, the bank president, okayed the check. He had his wife bring in a couple albums from home for me to sign.
Right.
And I went back to the showroom with the check and gave it to him, and he counted me out the change from 3,664 to 4,011. I had gas money in my pocket and a brand new Corvette, and when the engagement ended, I could not wait to get in that little beauty and drive cross country with the radio turned up full blast and the wind blowing in my face. And it doesn't get any better than that. I thought, man, if this is the pinnacle, I'll take it, because this is it.
This is it. And then the rest is history. And if you want to read about it, it's Icons, Idols, and Idiots of Hollywood. Bruce Belland, the Four Preps, America's first boy band, and they toured a lot in Canada too. So, Bruce, thank you very much, and continued good luck to you.
Thank you very much, Dennis. My publicist will not forgive me if I don't repeat the title one more time. Okay. Icons, Idols, and Idiots of Hollywood. My Adventures in America's First Boy Band. It's available at Barnes & Noble. It's available on Amazon. I'm a veteran and a good guy. Please buy the book.
Okay, we will. Thank you.
26 miles across the sea, Santa Catalina is a-waiting for me. Santa Catalina, the island of romance, 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 romance. Water all around it, everywhere, tropical trees and salty air. But for me, the thing that's a-waiting there's romance.
Thank you for visiting with us today. This is Talking Books and Stuff with Dennis Rimmer. Contact him at dennis@talkingbooks.tk. Thank you, and may all the good news be yours. Oh, and don't forget to check out his book, The Great Canadian Notebook, available across Canada and at amazon.ca.